Hey everybody, I'm really excited about today's episode. I talked with my incredible friend, entrepreneur, and executive leader, Alexia Raven. Lexi has a remarkable career path, including roles at iHeart Radio, Lynn Television, Fox Broadcast Network, and as Vice President at Warner Brothers Discovery Global Research and Insights Group. In 2022, she was named amongst the top 50 women leaders in Los Angeles by Women We Admire. And one thing that struck me in this episode is the way in which Lexi structures and prioritizes her personal growth and life design, and how she pours into others this same calm, clear sense of direction and prioritization of what matters most. Without any further ado, here's my conversation with Lexi Raven. All right, welcome to the Building Thinkers podcast today. I'm so delighted to be joined by my friend Lexi Raven. I think today we're going to talk really all things about building this life of adventure and continuous personal growth. Lexi, I thank you so much for coming on. I'm so excited to dig in.
Thanks, Tracy, for having me. I'm really excited to be having this conversation today with you.
All right. And so Lexi and I are in the same group that we call WCMC, and we have grown a lot in there together, and we have a book study, and our kids have become friends, and it's been so fun to really just explore. And in Lexi, I found a fellow growth nerd in there who has Lexi, you've just built, really, when I was thinking about reading through your notes and thinking about the title, I really did get to this life of adventure and continuous personal growth. You've done so many amazing things. I know you're not going to brag on yourself. So you've been vice president at Warner Brothers. You've worked at Fox and Lynn TV and iHeart Radio. And now you have your own amazing company that you get to tell us about. And just doing strategic consulting and strategic insights. And one of the things that so stands out to me is this intentionality towards your life and this idea of goals and growth and pursuing what you want in your family and in your profession. And so I know we'll talk about all those different things, but maybe you can start with, what is it that you feel you build? We're building thinkers. And so just talk to us about, any place you want to start in this idea of adventure and personal growth. How did you get there?
Well, it's a really great question, Tracy, and I so appreciate you asking it because it really allowed me to kind of reflect on what do I build? I really had to stop and think about, what am I building? And so I feel like it comes down to a really simple point for me, that I think I am building a life of adventure and continuous personal growth. So I've kind of been on this journey of, similar to what everyone I feel like in Gen X, or the majority of us in Gen Xers, and even, boomers and millennials to some degree, and kind of this very clear linear path, right? You go to school, you go to college, you get married, you climb the corporate ladder of success. And have some kids along the way, and, have a house with the white picket fence. It's that very stereotypical kind of linear path that I was brought up with and to believe in. But in this journey in life, I think I have started to take and see and reflect on things that now I believe that instead of focusing on kind of those tangible structures and those measures of typical success, I'm really more dedicated to building a strong foundation of experiences, of knowledge, of skills. So I'm really kind of striving to build this life of adventures where I seek out new challenges, explore different cultures, embrace opportunities to learn and to grow. And I think having a mindset of curiosity, or an open mindset, and that thirst for knowledge allows me to construct this life that's always evolving, always be enriched by the people I meet and the experiences I have along the way. So right now, I guess my two focuses, are on a few different builds. Mm-hmm. And one you mentioned is really growing my new business, Maverix Insights and Strategy, into a successful business and entrepreneurship, and really cultivating those client relationships and also along the way empowering other women to build successful careers in research and insights. That has been, I have been really fortunate and privileged in my life to be impacted by strong, empowering, kind, generous women, whether it's been, my family life with my mother and my grandmother and my aunts, to the women I've worked with along the way, and to the friends that I have in my life. Women supporting women is such a powerful adventure on its own. So that's one of my builds I'm focusing on. And then the other, I think, is really building a life in Wimberley. We just moved here a few years ago, and it's really providing a solid foundation for my children as they enter their middle school years, their junior high years, and ensuring that they know that this purpose of life and an adventure is kind of what it's all about. In fact, Tracy, this idea of kind of purpose and building reminds me of this quote that my husband sent me this week. And it really stuck with me because it's kind of what I subscribe to now. And I think it's just a learning journey for me as I get older. But the quote was new fancy cars, a Rolex watch, always having the new stuff or material items. That was the status symbol of the past. And the status symbol of today is freedom. And freedom being time freedom, location freedom, financial freedom. And that really aligns with my life philosophy. And I think I've shared this with you before too, Tracy, that when we went on our 6-month road trip, so during the pandemic, we sold our house, packed up everything, got in the car, traversed the country, and we briefly met this couple, my husband and our 3 kids, at the base of the Grand Teton Mountains. We were there visiting. And we, we're all standing there kind of marveling at these majestic mountains and taking in their beauty. And we kind of struck up this conversation, and we told him what we were doing. And he said really simply back to us that time is wealth. And for me, that hit me. I was like, oh my gosh, it was so powerful, because it kind of reminds us to evaluate our priorities, make conscious choices on how we want to spend our time. And I think that kind of philosophy about time as wealth is really gives me perspective, helps inspire me to make the most out of every moment that we're given. And so much so that I subscribe to, I etched it in my driveway. And if I ever get a tattoo, I think that's what it would be. It would be time as wealth somewhere. I don't know where I would put it, but time as wealth is really my life motto, I think, now.
Oh, I love that, Lexi. It's making me think about, okay, I want to unpack further this this journey that you talk about of this traditional trajectory of you go to college, you get this job, and these kind of metrics of success that we are inundated with in culture. And while there is some of this rethinking and unpacking, it's still kind of the large, I feel like it's a little bit upstream to swim against still these concepts and ideas. And so what would you say, maybe to your former self even, if you could have recognized something sooner, or not in a way of regret, but in a way of what did you learn in that pursuit of some of those success metrics, and you achieved them, right? And then also recognize there were certain pieces that you wanted to shift and go in a different direction. So what would you say, maybe is a piece of that learning of the shift from the linear maybe traditional route of success to this recognition of time is wealth, which might take you on a path that you are, a team of 1 or a team of 3 or versus a team of 5,000. And, how did you wrestle with some of that? Anything that stands out there?
Oh my gosh, so much. So first, let me say that I am speaking from a point of privilege. I recognize that and understand it. I've had a lot of opportunity in my life, and I think that has allowed me to also reflect and pivot where I, decided to maybe this isn't exactly everything I want right now. So I just want to, make sure that I voice that, because I do understand the privilege and the opportunity I've been given. But going back, I think in high school, I don't think I was exposed to all of the opportunity that life had available. Whereas I think because of technology today, the world has become a smaller place, and we have so much exposure to different cultures and people and opportunities in the world. But I think I did the most with what I had at the time. But I think I could have done a better job of trying to expose myself and finding more information. But I kind of subscribed to that, that stereotypical path, and that's what I did. I think if I had to do it over again, I'd probably do it the same. I don't have a lot of regrets in life. I feel like every opportunity, every step is a step that you take to get to where you are today. But I think that has propelled me to always now look for the opportunity, because I don't know that I was always so consciously looking for those opportunities. I kind of sought them out, but I think I was maybe naive, growing up, that there's a lot more opportunity than I think I knew about. So I subscribe to the traditional one.
I think it's this maybe like just reorientation of priorities at different times in life and different seasons, and this recognition. And so you've had that from going from Hollywood quite literally to the hill country is a very different transition and pacing. And I wonder if there may be some similarities in why we chose to end up here. I know that I go pretty fast paced at work, and I wanted a slower pace of life in the way my children were raised, the community around us, and so the intentionality of being here allows for a piece of that. I don't know if any of that was part of y'all's decision as well as you thought about that transition.
It absolutely was, Tracy. We can it just take me back to like prior to 2020, right? I was in corporate America, where my time was really kind of controlled by the company, or at least that's how I felt. I felt like my time was really, spent a lot at work. I worked from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. most days, and I didn't feel like I had much balance in my life and all. We hear so much about that word balance, and I feel like it's such a fallacy, because it definitely wasn't balanced. I'm in research, and I even did a pie chart back in 2019 to figure out where was I spending my time. And I was kind of alarmed by it. I saw like over 50% of my time was work. The rest kind of broken out into sleep and some activities. But what really was alarming to me was when I looked at the time that I was spending with my family, it was 13%. I was like, this is out of whack. I can't just be spending 13% of my time with my family. And I was feeling it. It was kind of manifesting and, starting to feel some of that burnout and exhaustion. I was kind of in this, relentless whirlwind of a fast-paced lifestyle. And while it was great, again, I don't have regrets about it. I just, constantly felt like I was chasing deadlines and obligations, and I was perpetually kind of playing catch up, and I saw my kids for maybe 2 or 3 hours a day. And that started to be something that, I wanted more, or wanted something different. And I loved my job at Warner Brothers, being a VP of research, and it filled me with this sense of accomplishment and pride. At some point, though, I think I kind of allowed it to consume and define a significant part of my identity. And so as time kind of wore on and we moved into the pandemic, I think time kind of stood still for a moment. And I had this great opportunity to interview an anthropologist named Grant McCracken, and I'll never forget what he said in this interview. He was saying, work is theater. And I was like, what? What did he just say? Like, it stopped me in my tracks in the interview. I was like, work is theater. And a lot of women were waking up to this point about like, yeah, I kind of was like, oh my God, it's been a performance. No wonder I'm exhausted. I've been dressing the part, trying to fulfill all of that identity around who my work persona is. So then I started to really rethink, like, who do I want to be, and what is true fulfillment. And so I think that's why we made the decision to take this transformative journey and reevaluate and rethink what we wanted out of life. And so in 2020, we reimagined and regained control. And I think that's where we kind of thought about, where do we want to be? Who do we want to be with? All of our families back in Texas. And so that was really important as our kids were getting older. School was really important. What schools are they going to go to? And also just taking time to embrace kind of this idea of like a more holistic world and more meaningful connections. Step away kind of from that like hamster wheel and that draining cycle of busyness. And creating a life that's more prioritized for well-being and exploration and experiences, both from a personal standpoint as well as a professional standpoint. So that's what got us here. And well, like you said, we moved from the Hollywood to the Hill Country, and it's been a fantastic adventure. And I'm not rushing out the door, every morning or coming home exhausted and not wanting to like have conversations. It's just like I have more freedom in my time, which goes back to time as wealth.
Oh my goodness, I love that. Well, I'm so glad you chose to move from Hollywood to Hill Country because it's been such a joy to get to have conversations together in our WCMC group. And, one of the things I'd like to transition into is you spoke a lot in your notes, and then I've gotten to meet your husband now. And so I've seen this in action, like just how important your marriage relationship is to your overall, life. And I think it's something that sometimes gets like it's put in a separate box from our work and our overall. And I think that in some of the things that you have really been intentional about, you have worked to integrate your partnership as such a key piece of your goal setting, your planning, your direction. And I think that there's something for our listeners and myself to learn in the way that you've approached that. And so can we dig into one of the sentence stems we share is if only people knew, and you have an if only people knew about this piece. So will you share that?
Yes, I feel like this is going to be controversial, so I'm a little
No, it's great. I
apprehensive
love the
about sharing.
controversial. This is a good controversial that I'm willing to step into.
Um, okay. So if only people knew that marriage is easy, and easy may not be the right descriptor for what I'm trying to communicate. Um, so I just want to acknowledge that too. And I know some people disagree completely with me on this, and I think everyone's journey is of course different. For me though, I would say that my marriage is easy. And just to give you some background, my husband and I met in high school. We dated in high school. We dated all throughout college. I think we dated 9 years, and then we got married, and then we traveled the world and had kids. And so we've been together for a very long time. Um, but I always think about like, what is it that makes our partnership work? Because it is very much a partnership. And I think it's, communication is a huge part of it. And then the other part of it is, and I joke about this, but I do think it's really true, is that we really like each other. And I've read some research about, what does that mean today? Like you have to, love your spouse and your partner, but it's more important to like them. And what I mean about it is, like, I really like him. I like to see his face in the morning. I like to listen to him. I like to chat with him. I like to go on bike rides with him, watch a show, walk around Blue Hole, chat in the bathroom in the mornings with him. And I think that's actually one of the best places we have conversations is in the bathroom in the mornings. And I think he likes me. I think that's really served us well for our 30 plus years together. And I think I also subscribe to that philosophy. Like it's more about quality than quantity. So while we have been together for a really long time, I do believe that the quality of our relationship has been strong and always evolving. And I think that idea of, adventure is probably what, continues to, we still meet, we're still here together, going on that journey. So yeah, we've done a lot of things together. And I was writing to you that I think we're like a pair of seasoned explorers, like embarking on a lifelong journey of adventure together. And that's really how I view our relationship. We moved away to Los Angeles together. We explored, 30 different hamburger joints while we were there in LA because we didn't know anybody. We made up our own fun. We've gone across the globe together from Europe to South America and then back again and taken our kids. We've collected memories and experiences that I think have really shaped our journey and our partnership. And so, part of our partnership is being parents. So we've been navigating that territory of raising 3 kids, and we did the whole natural birth process together. Talk about like a bonding experience. That really was an incredibly powerful moment in our partnership. And we've just been doing this journey together for so long, and we've built a house together. We've, share our dreams, our values. We're just a united front. And I think I'm going to show and applaud you and give you some props, because this life wheel that you had us do was so valuable, because it helps me really, or rather crystallize for me, that relationship with my partner, with Eric, is really a foundation that serves all of the other points in my life. And that has to be really strong. And I think that we intentionally make it strong. We intentionally do things together. We intentionally have conversations. We have disagreements, but we work through those disagreements. So that foundation and being curious about one another after 30 years is, I think, is what continues to propel us forward. So I don't know if I encapsulated and I probably did it disservice to saying like marriage is easy. But that's what I feel like our marriage has been easy, in the sense of we enjoy one another and we explore together, and we grow together. I think that's probably really important.
Yeah, it's making me think about, I love it. First of all, I think you could write a marriage book, and you've got like half the title there and several of the chapters already. But it is this, I think that what I hear in it is marriage is easy because of the intentionality that you have put in. And so the experience that you have of marriage is easy, but because of the work that was there underneath it, and because of your unified front that I hear in the exploration and the desire for personal growth. And so I do think people get into relationships in which person is growing and the other is not, and that can be really challenging, right? Because that's where people say you change, and all of those things. And so you have this unified desire to explore together, to figure out things. You said make your own fun, right? And so those are all verbs, like not to go back to like teacher style, but they're all verbs that you have chosen together to act. And I think that's one thing that continues to strike me as like an area that I can, both relate to and continue to learn from, is this desire for personal growth. I'm obsessed with, hence building thinkers and modern learning habits. And I love productivity, but what has evolved for me as I have gone through my life and career to date is the desire for what you're speaking to, of the balance, of the holistic. Like, I think you can both be ambitious and centered. You can desire impact,
yes, I love that, Tracy.
And like growth for others, and want to nurture your home life. And I think that somehow we think, and I think maybe women wrestle with this in different ways, of we think, even though we feel empowered in the current culture in many ways in here, there's other ways in which it still feels like it's a choice. It still feels like I have to choose to either, and I know it's a false choice, because I think that what I am continuing to learn, a sentence that's been really helpful for me that I've shared before, is be where your feet are. And so being here with you in this conversation, I'm able to focus in and learn and, do this piece. But when my feet are with my children, I have to make an active effort at this sometimes, because sometimes things are going in the back of my mind about something else, right? To be where my feet are and choose that you can have multiple areas that you're working on, but with intentionality of when you're here. So I don't know. Does that resonate with what your experience has been?
First of all, I think that's the title of your new book, Ambitious and Centered. That very much resonates with me. In fact, I was thinking about, one of your questions was about, things to like teach my children. And I think that's one of the things that I really want them to grow up with, knowing that life is about ands, not ors. Like they can be ambitious and centered. They can be an artist and an athlete. They can be an explorer and, have a life that is rooted and grounded somewhere. So that definitely resonates with me. And I love that, just that phrase, be where my feet are. Because it goes back to kind of, my philosophy of like time is wealth. Like just embrace every moment when and where you are exactly at that moment. One of my girlfriends tells me, she goes, you're right where you need to be, right where you are. And it's kind of that same philosophy is like, just embrace, that, what you have at that moment.
I love that. Yeah, a couple of the other areas that we were talking about exploring is something that I have seen you reflect, 10 million fold, but this open mindset and positivity. And so, do you want to unpack any more of that? This might be another, if only people knew, or, a quote that stands out to you in this area, but I see it and it's like, it's something that you can't fake. Like, I mean, well, I guess you can fake positivity, but it's very clear when it's not authentic. This is something that so radiates when I am with you, and from every word, I don't know. It's just something that you express. So I'd love to hear about what it means to you.
Yeah, I think that is positivity. I feel like I'm just a generally positive person. I think, again, I have that mindset of, you know, everything will work out kind of mentality. And that if you have an open mindset, you can unlock kind of all those hidden joys. I just did a joy, someone was doing interviews about joy, and it was similar to what I'm talking about now. It's like just having an open mindset. You can find joy if you look for it and are open to it. So having this kind of open mindset allows you to appreciate the beauty and the wonder that surrounds you or in that experience, in that moment. So I do think that's just part of what I gravitate to is just being open-minded. And I think, sometimes it can come across as, I've heard this in the past, and this is one of the things in like corporate, it's like, it's a little Pollyanna, or you're just too nice, like that was a bad thing. But I think having an open mindset and accepting, that we can't change other people, but we can only change how we react to people or certain situations. I think that allows you to, and empowers you to really forge your own path, because you can discover endless possibilities if you have an open mindset and are curious and create a life filled with happiness, fulfillment. But yeah, I think for me it starts there. It starts with just having an open mindset and just being positive. You choose positivity.
It reminds me of, so one of the books that we read as WCMC in our book club was soundtracks. And I've spoken about this before on the podcast, but this idea from John Acuff of being able to recognize like the thoughts in our mind as soundtracks and the ones that are no longer serving us. And so Brene Brown would say the stories we tell ourselves, right? So the same concept.
I love Brene Brown.
So like, what are these mindsets, that we have, and
Yes.
shifting them? And of course there's science behind this of being able to literally like kind of work your brain in the way that you're thinking about things. If you are thinking about the same thing over and over again in a negative way, that's going to kind of naturally come up for you until you shift that. And so I think this idea of being open to the possibilities, it gets taken into the more like new age concept of, we also read parts of manifestation. And I think that that brought up some great conversations. And yet my inclination is to take it into the neuroscience of it, right? Or okay, what's the specific strategy I can do? Or why does that work? And to me, a piece of why the idea of manifestation works is because you're putting visualization to it, and your brain, it helps prime it, for lack of a better term, for the experience to actually occur, because you're open and you've already thought through some of the steps. So the strategic consultant side of me is like, yes, that works because you've thought through, these are the steps that I will then take to make the manifestation thing work. And I'm transitioning us to one of my favorite topics, which is goal setting, which is also in your notes. And I got to learn,
my favorite too,
that one of the things I want to hear about is you mapped out your 20s and 30s And then you did those things, you achieved those things. And so I want to hear about your anything around your goal setting process. How did you start doing that? What do you find helpful there?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that book Manifestation, which I think is really, it's goal setting, right? It's just like you said, it's like you you visualize it, you write it down, you make an action plan, you work that action plan, and then you're more likely to achieve it. And there's some great research on this, which I'm sure you also looked into, but like I heard this back in college, and it was that light bulb moment again for me, that if you write down your goals, you're 42% more likely to achieve them. So I am a big believer in writing down things you want to achieve. And that can be big and small. Like, I want to do the dishes today, or I want to plant some plants today, or I need to go to the grocery store. Or it can be, I want to build a new business. I want to start a side hustle. I want to find a partner. I think it's really goal setting, and being very intentional with it and putting it on paper. Like you said, I mapped out my 20s and 30s. I have Excel spreadsheets for everything I feel like in my life. And they're not beautiful. They're like pretty remedial spreadsheets. But I put timelines. How old am I? What's my timeline? When do I want to achieve? What are those steps I need to get there? And just to give you kind of an example of like how this actually has manifested in my life.
Yes.
When my husband and I were debating on whether or not to have a third child, I was all on board. I was like, let's go. After our second one, like right after he was born, I was like, let's do this again. This is fun. He was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Slow down. And so I remember we had many conversations about it. And he said, show me a spreadsheet that we can afford a third child. I was like, all right, no problem. I got this. It's in the bag. All I have to do is produce a spreadsheet and show you the plan.
Oh my goodness.
This is going to be a walk in the park for me. So that's what I did. Put a spreadsheet together. We discussed it. We, again, looked at timelines. How old are they going to be when we're this age? Like, where are they going to go to school? So it is very intentional in all aspects of my life, from job, one job to the next job, what I want to achieve within that current job that I'm in. So it was mapping out, I want a promotion by this age, and I want this salary. And then also like with traveling, my husband and I and my kids are huge travelers. So just, again, being very intentional with that, like where do we want to go? How much is it going to cost? When do we want to do it? What are the places we're going to go? But yeah, my life is like a whole bunch of spreadsheets because I believe in the power of goal setting.
I love it. And I think one piece where I see people get stuck and where I've kind of learned to overcome this chasm a little bit, but I think it still is an area of challenge, is when you go from a big goal, like wanting to get a promotion, to what are the smaller sub steps to reach that goal? How do you address that piece? Is that literally like other rows in your spreadsheet that are underneath the big goal, or how do you think about that?
Yeah, I think I dissect it, right? I take it apart. So in order to get a promotion, what are those steps that I need to get there? And I had like I said, I've had so many great mentors in my life over the years. And one, his name's Todd W. Terry. He was our general sales manager at KXAN, the local TV station when I worked there. And he said, if you don't ask, you don't get. So that has been part of my philosophy. Don't ask, don't get. And I think especially as women, especially when it comes to promotions, some of the data shows that women will wait until someone recognizes them. And that's not how it works. You've got to be more intentional and ask for things that you want. And what's the worst that can happen? Someone can say no. But I think we have this kind of fear of rejection or imposter syndrome, all of those things, right? But my philosophy has been don't ask, don't get. And then how do I get to where I want to be? What are those steps? What do I need to achieve them? If it's a promotion and I need to show I've taken on more responsibility, what responsibility specifically am I going to take on? If I need to be involved in more parts of the business, what do I need to learn? So being very specific, I think, has served me well in my career professionally as well as personally.
Oh, I love this. Okay, it makes me think too. I recognize in a lot of your background that you've had opportunities to mentor other women, to be recognized amongst, again, like top women leaders in LA and in Austin, like all these things. And so, um, I'm wondering if you have any other advice that maybe hasn't fit into another box or expands off of some of the other topics that we've been talking about of when you're mentoring women, are there other things that you'd add on?
I think my advice for women, especially professionally, is probably an amalgamation of advice I've received over the years in my career. The first being is build your network. And any internship, I ran the internship program within our department for I think about 10 years. And that's one of the things that I really stress to anyone who came through the internship was make connections, build your network. Like if you're here, you have an opportunity to meet people in a very different way than if you're employed here. People are very open to interns, right? In a way that I think they're, for lack of a better word, they're like non-threatened. But so they open up the advice and the opportunities to learn. So that's the first thing I always tell people is build that network, have as many conversational, informal interviews with people that you can. And I think that still applies today, whether it's again professionally or personally. If you want to find, if you want to learn something, go ask. Goes back to that don't ask, don't get. So go ask someone, have a conversation. And what I found is people are more than willing oftentimes to share their advice, their guidance, their knowledge with you because those are teaching opportunities. So it's build your network, know who you are, know who you're not. So know your brand. And also just empower other people. Like be empathetic, lead with empathy. I think that is so critical. And I do think somewhere along the way that was, you've heard it referred to as like soft skills. And that bothers me so much. I think that is one of the most strong skills that anybody can have. It is so incredibly important today as everybody is dealing with burnout and, all the layoffs that are happening today. And certainly in and around my industry of tech and entertainment, leading with empathy is critical in my opinion. So getting to know people beyond what's on their job description and what they're responsible for. Because at the end of the day, we're all humans. And if you have that connection with someone on a, basic human basis, I feel like that allows you to lead and you want to like get in there and work together and get the job done. That's my philosophy in terms of advice for anybody who I've mentored and any of my colleagues is just, enjoy what you do, be nice, ask for things, and empower other women. I think that is critical, especially in corporate, is just being respectful and encouraging and supportive of other women. Because if we don't lift each other up, then, who does? So I think has been something for me that I strive to do both professionally and personally.
This idea of soft skills. Well, first of all, I remember writing, I don't remember where this was. I think I was writing a series of guest blog posts for an ed tech group. And I wrote about how, like, the frustration with the word soft skills and saying we should change it to like core competencies or something. It was my advocacy for shifting that term. And I think now there's so much more, like we've known this, but again, this might be different circles or just the different things I'm reading. But I think that there is this shift coming, or I just, again, see it more where we understand maybe it's the popularization from Amy Edmondson of psychological safety and the recognition that you actually don't get anything done when people don't feel safe, which should be common sense. But, and in particular in areas of innovation, how deeply psychologically safe people need to feel to be able to bring forward ideas that haven't been done before, which we should all be very interested in this moment in time in which technology is changing so quickly that we have to be able to bring ideas to the table in a place. Anyway, all of those things. But it's making me think about empathy and these soft skills and maybe ideas that traditionally we thought leaders should be hard and firm and yes clear, but stand in command. And this shift to being a servant leader. I don't know what the right term is here, but just leadership competencies, fully encompassing the soft skills to recognize, to your point, the human to human interaction, that's all work is like humans together
Mm-hmm.
trying to communicate to get something done, some strategy, some, no matter the
Right.
industry. And so if you don't know how to connect with other humans as a leader, you may get things done by force, by this push.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder about if there's just a lot of untapped potential in our organizations because we have not thought about the individual and the collective. And this is where I spend a lot of my time in learning experience design and in supporting organizations in these areas of learning to think about the individual human potential. And I think a huge piece of that is back to psychological safety. If you are on that kind of scale, if you are afraid to learn, if you're afraid to ask a question, then how do we anticipate we ever have our people growing? Like they're only growing by accident if we're
Right.
not intentional. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's just something that was kind of coming up for me when you were speaking to those tips for women. And I hope that will mean we'll have more women in these roles with leadership competencies that might be labeled soft but are actually essential, that might have been
Right.
missing, and not to say that men of course can have those skills and develop them. They just have to be, like, men and women have to be intentional to do that.
Right. Agree 100%. It's so key, especially in today's business world, is really having those human to human interactions, like you said. And I feel like in my new business, with my business partners, we have that together, that psychological safety where we're constantly thinking and dreaming up ideas and we can share those with one another. And, we'll kind of shift like, well, maybe this, or maybe if we pivot this way. But it is so refreshing to have that. And I definitely have had that before. Um, but it's liberating
Mm.
to just feel like, what, I can throw out an idea and there may be nothing there. Let's talk about it and see what happens and where it may or may not go. But at least having that sense of feeling like somebody's not gonna label you stupid, or wow, it's a dumb question, or why are they speaking?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it just made me think of an analogy for some
Mm-hmm.
reason to user experience. And when I was building an app in my early 20s, I was involved with the user experience work in particular. And there's this idea of you want to create as little friction as possible between the user and the thing you
Yes.
want them to do. And so I feel like that here somehow applies. There's some analogy here of that, because when you're lacking that environment of, like, you can't just say the thing, you can't just get the work done, because it's all
Right.
this subculture and am I speaking out of turn, or what did they really mean by that? And when we can get past that, it is totally freeing when you have a place to just come together and share ideas, and you get so much more done. And so it's again one of those areas where we are wasting so much potential in the dot 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 conversations where everybody's terrified of what somebody's going to say in Slack. If you are feeling that way, there is a problem. Get help with your culture.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah, my business partner and I, Liz, were just talking about this. The more or the less friction you can have in anything, the better it is for the end user. And whether that's, just access to certain things. But yeah, frictionless is key.
Yes. Okay. I'd love to transition and talk a little bit more about Maverix Insights, your business.
So yes, Mavericks Insights and Strategy was born out of my partners and I, our love for everything insights related. Like I mentioned, we all three of us have worked within the studio side for many years together, and we just had a unique opportunity to kind of join forces and create something, and work with industries and partners across the spectrum. And so we've created this, and we think one of our unique differentiators is that we come from the business side. So we know those questions businesses and business stakeholders are asking. So we know how to create an approach that really answers those questions, but more importantly, it makes those answers actionable. Like, what are we going to do with this now that we've learned it? What kind of action can we take? Which I I think really stems back to what we were talking about in our earlier conversation, like just being very intentional. Like, what are the outcomes you want to achieve? How do we create an approach to answer and to get you closer or achieve those outcomes? So we work across industry. Like I said, our background is in entertainment. So we've done a lot of qualitative and quantitative work in that space, whether it's content testing, brand tracking, generational studies, looking at Gen Alpha, Gen Z, millennials, Gen X, boomers, and also looking at things like you're talking about, like UX testing, UI testing, and just a whole host of different types of projects we've worked on. So I think it's a really fascinating time to be in this space because the world is moving so fast and you have to really be tapped into what's happening from a consumer perspective, or really what I like from a human perspective, because I like to use the word human because consumer makes it feel so sterile, and we're all human. So how humans are behaving, reacting, understanding the whys of what drives them, motivates them, or us. And then putting that to use in terms of, answering those business questions for clients. So it's really an exciting adventure that we're on. We just launched in April, so it's pretty new. But some of our values around some of the things that we've talked today, around being collaborative, empowering, and being inclusive, being flexible and nimble. And one of the things that we're doing, which I'm really excited about, is we're taking over the lead for the LA chapter for WIRE, which is Women in Research. And so we're going to be working with and putting on these different events, which really taps into our core value about empowering others in this particular space. So a lot to look forward to over this next year and the years beyond. But it is, again, going back to, it's an adventure that I am embarking upon. And I am, what did you say before? Like right where my feet are.
Oh yeah, being where your
right
feet
where
are.
my feet are.
Yes.
Being where my feet are, and it feels great.
I love it. I'm so excited to see your amazing business take off and doing all of those incredible things. Is there anything that has kind of surprised you, or, anything that feels really different that you've already learned in shifting to entrepreneurship? Doing similar things, I imagine that you were doing in corporate, but now doing it within your own company with your colleagues. Is there anything that you weren't expecting, or has it been what you thought?
Something surprising. I guess one of the things that I have found, again, just really powerful is the conversations we've had with different folks in the industry, and everyone just being incredibly generous with their advice, thoughts, feedback, willing to make connections. That really has made me feel, and my business partners feel, really excited about this journey, because it does feel slightly different from our previous experiences, and that people are just really want to see you succeed, which feels incredible, right? And it goes back to our philosophy about empowering other people. We do that, and to really feel that and see it and experience it has been incredibly powerful for us. Which I think is why we're just leaning full force into this new adventure together.
Yeah, I have found that to be true as well as an entrepreneur. And I think it goes to one of your pieces of advice around don't ask, don't get. That's been challenging for me, I'll say, because I want to do it myself, or I don't want to ask, or I think there's a piece that's still a little bit of a people pleaser that I'm working through, of not wanting to burden other people, or maybe it's some fear of rejection. But I have found that every time I've been asking, and again, in circles of generosity, or where, I know it is a safe place to ask generally, people are so willing to give their time. This podcast has been a piece of that. People willing to give their time to have conversations to help others learn and grow. People willing to connect me with other people that need learning experience design work, or are willing to share a testimonial, or give the podcast 5 stars, which does something in the algorithms that's good. I don't know. It's all of that that's been helpful along the way for me too. And I've spoken about this a lot, but there's there's this group that I'm involved in called L&D Shakers, and it's a community, an international community of amazing people that are all involved in learning and development. And that is one of the most generous places where people just share openly. And it's a lot of what you're talking about people empowering each other. And so what I've chosen to do is be in those places where there is that generosity, and then it compounds, and people have this beautiful potential in them to make these generous choices. That doesn't mean they always choose to do that, but I am looking to be that. If I'm not seeing it out there, to be that at least for others.
Yeah, that is something about that like momentum, right? That you're kind of describing about this, it compounds, and then you're thinking of ideas on how you can connect that person to this other person. It's just that, we all, I think, can empower one another. We're stronger together, right? Yes. Than we are apart. So I think that I agree with you there. It's like and you intentionally want to be in those places where you get that feeling and get that energy from. It's like, where are you getting that energy? And I think when you get that energy, you want to replicate it. You want to have it again, right? We're like, we're wired by our dopamine. And if you have a positive, rewarding experience, you're going to go back to it more often. So I think that's one of the things too, is in entrepreneurship, outside of just all of the paperwork that goes into it and understanding all of the operational side. That's one thing that's very new, just being responsible for all of that. But the other piece that's so rewarding is exactly what you're describing, Tracy.
Yeah, lots of spreadsheets there for our own company dashboards and all of the things. So, Lexi, I'd love to go to, well, first of all, I could talk to you forever. And luckily, in this case, I get to continue talking to you because you are my real life friend. So that's fun. But I'd love to transition to any input recommendations, any books or podcasts, any of those that stand out to you that you want to share. And then we put all of these in the episode description so people can explore those.
Oh, okay. I think so. I thought about this. So there's been 3 books that I always pull up in my mind because they always seem to apply to something that I'm talking about. So one is Invisible Influence by Jonah Berger. It really talks about how people make decisions, why they make the decisions, and we're really influenced by other people. And I think that is fascinating to me because we think somehow that it's very rational and like we're making that on our own, but it's really subconscious and we don't even know that it's happening. So that book has really been so illuminating. I recommend it to everybody that I've talked to. Now, I'm sure you probably hear this, stories like when your friend buys a white Ford, vehicle, then you start seeing white Ford vehicles everywhere. Or I remember when people were in LA, when we lived there, people were getting some work done on their houses. And it's like, well, maybe we need to get work done on our house. It's like, we weren't like, that didn't enter our mind until somebody else was doing it. And so I'm just fascinated by that, like kind of that domino effect of how we're influenced by other people. The Millionaire Next Door, my dad gave me this book a long, long time ago. And it really changed my perception with money and how to manage it. I think it's such a great resource. It really talks about how anybody can become a millionaire. It's what you do with that money. And it kind of goes back to, I think, my philosophy about, that time is wealth, and how you choose to spend that money and what you do with it can really be impactful and powerful. So it's on my shelf right here, I think. And the one that you mentioned, Brene Brown, Braving the Wilderness. Actually, in my previous work, we had the privilege of having Brene come and speak to us, and I'll never forget that. I read her book, and now part of the language I use both in my personal life and professional life is, what is the story I'm telling myself? How can I, what do I want to learn from this? How do I want to move forward with this? But just that phrase has been so powerful to really what is the story I'm telling myself? Maybe that's not it. Maybe I just need to have a conversation with someone and maybe we'll figure this out. Or, it's just really powerful. So I love her book. I use it a ton. So those are the 3 books I just love and always kind of come back to. And then podcasts. So I'm sure you've heard of The Happiness Lab with Laurie Santos. One of my favorites. I listen to that on walks. It gives me ideas. It just makes me feel good. So I get inspired and motivated by it. So I listen to that a lot. Adam Grant at work, he's one of my favorites also. I have his books here. I listen to his podcast. He just has a way of putting things in that it's just digestible and actionable that you can do. So I love his work. Smartless is just really funny and entertaining. I've been listening to that a lot lately with Jason Bateman and the two other guys. It's funny. So those are some of the recommendations in terms of books and podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts. It's where I feel like it's my motivation hour. So I'll choose a podcast that is specific to something I want to learn that day, or I want to feel empowered or inspired. So I'll use it strategically in terms of what I want to get from it that particular day. That's how I don't listen to like the murder mystery podcast. I don't listen to any of that. It's always it's a learning function for me, but podcast is a learning function for me. So that's how I use it.
We are aligned in this
area.
There's
so much great stuff.
Yeah, we're aligned in this area because in our WCMC, sometimes the rest of our group goes into either pop culture or murder mystery, and I just don't know. I just have to nod and smile. I'm so glad y'all enjoy that, but I don't know.
I don't know anything about the murder mysteries. I know. I feel, and I'm sure they're fantastic, and I'd probably get a lot from it, but I don't know. Nope.
No, I'm too much of a scaredy cat to listen to that stuff. I'm like, now...
Me too, a little bit,
The story I will tell myself is a scary one if that's what I put in. So that's why I don't...
Right, like, this could happen to you.
Yeah, I don't want to know that. Anyway, okay, no, Lexi, tell our listeners where they can find you. Do you want people to reach out about certain things? Are you taking new clients with your company? Like, who should reach out to you?
Anyone is welcome to reach out. You can find me on LinkedIn or at maverixinsights.com, Mavericks with an X at the end. I'm on Instagram at Hollywood to Hill Country, although I'm not as active as I once used to be. I think part of that is just my journey I've taken is like, why am I spending my time here? Who am I doing it for, me or someone else? I have a lot of complicated feelings about it. It's complex, and I'm sure others out there can relate to it some way. Like, I want to, but then I'm like, but why? Anyways. But yes, LinkedIn is a great way. Yes, and Maverix Insights and Strategy is up and running, and we are taking new clients. So if you're interested and have any projects where you're just really interested in tapping into consumer behavior, or want to understand something about a new product or experience or content that you're launching, please feel free to reach out. We'd love to have a conversation and see if there's a fit and opportunity to collaborate.
Wonderful. Lexi, this was so much fun. I knew this conversation would be just so delightful and informative. And one of the things that it's going to make me think about is one of the last things that you said about how you use podcasts, not just strategically for learning, but you even said how you want to feel. So I want you to know I'm going to continue to think about that. And that may end up needing to be incorporated into my course on building a modern learning habit, because I think that this idea of how it makes you feel, it can be a different avenue in when you can't quite access, okay, what am I trying to learn? You may not know, and you may know and be able to just resonate more with this idea of feeling. So I'm going to think about that.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm fascinated by need states, emotional need states, and how we make decisions based off of our need states. And so for me, I use that kind of intentionally when it comes to podcasts, like you said.
Oh my goodness. Okay, we're going to have a whole nother conversation about need states in the future. But again, Lexi, thank you so much for coming on. I'm excited to continue our friendship locally here, and so excited to see what Maverix Insights continues to do as it grows. And just thank you so much. Thanks so much for listening to the Building Thinkers podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends. And if you enjoyed what you heard, please leave a podcast rating and review. That helps more listeners find us in the world of podcasting algorithms. You can find out more about my learning and development strategy services at buildingthinkers.com. And remember, there's no limit to what you can learn.